Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics from our beautiful studios here on the campus of the University of Central Missouri in Warrensburg. We are joined this week by Representative, but maybe more importantly, Senate candidate Maggie Nurrenbern.
Great to be with you, Scott.
Welcome back, but now you're alone, right?
Sure am.
You're running for the Senate to replace Lauren Arthur. Big shoes to fill. Tell me why you're running.
Yeah, absolutely. Lauren's done a tremendous job in the Senate. And if we look over the last few years of policy bills or the budget, there isn't much that Lauren hasn't had a significant impact in. And honestly, I really hope to do much of the same.
So tell folks about your family.
Yeah, so I'm from Clay County. I have 3 young boys. They keep us really busy. I was a high school teacher, taught for 13 years before jumping into this. And thankfully have the great support of my husband, who's been supportive of this. And I'm ready to hit the ground running.
So currently nobody in the primary for you, right?
That's correct. Yeah, and that was really important for us. You know, there is so much at stake coming up in 2024, and we really can't be fighting each other.
So, well, that's good news. A little bit sad news. Tragedy struck your area. Killing of a young man that made the mistake of knocking on the wrong door, it sounds like.
Well, and it was just a shooting. And so thankfully, miraculously, he survived.
Yeah.
And what I can say about that is, you know, the fact that you can't go up to a house to pick up your little brothers without the fear of being shot makes it a very sad time for our state.
I'll tell you, the reaction, I thought it was commendable. The president called the family. I mean, that's nothing can make you feel good in a moment like that. But what may be a fitting thing to do? Yeah,
and I think just one of the best things about our president is that I think he really leads with compassion, and he recognizes moments that are important just to bring us together, that this shouldn't be a moment of division, it should be a moment of unity.
You know, you've got your folks that are extremely partisan, but, you know, to me, you got to get the sense Joe Biden's a nice guy.
He is.
We disagree with him on policy,
but
nice guy.
And his best moments are really that human side. And, you know, the family said they expected a couple minutes, and an hour later they were still talking on the phone to him. Well,
it was very commendable. But break this down. Throughout your political career, when you first was elected to the House, if you would have told me, oh my gosh, there's going to be a serious debate on gun control, I'd be like, whatever. Because even the Democrats, when I first got involved in politics, none of them would touch that. Now, there's Moms Demand. There are several groups that are really, they bring 300-400 people to a meeting, not just in the inner city, but out in places like Clay County, St. Charles County. What is a piece of gun legislation that you think would actually help keep schools safe that could maybe pass during the next 10 years of your legislative career?
And, you know, Scott, I say this as, like many Missourians, we are a family and we are proud to be responsible gun owners. When we look at what's happening right now, I think the vast majority of Missourians are asking us for a red flag law. Red states are passing those right now.
What's a red flag law for folks that don't know?
So simply, if somebody recognizes that there is a family member who is a significant threat, whether to themselves or to others, they can call the police and have them come and investigate, okay? If that person is going to be an imminent threat and really harm somebody or themselves, then the police can take the gun for a short period of time, right? All of this is through very significant procedures. It's not just going up and taking your gun for no reason, right? There has to be significant proof behind this. That is something that people have been asking for a long time. If that would have happened, the family of the shooter in St. Louis asked the police to intervene, and they weren't able to.
Let's talk about the budget. Wow. I mean, it's an interesting thing. You can almost predict it, right? I mean, the tulips are going to bloom around the fountains out front, and the Senate's going to write the budget. And it sort of looks like for, I guess, about the 5th year in a row now, not exclusively, but the heavy hand on that budget paper is probably going to be the Senate's.
Yeah, and we kept on saying that over and over again. We said, thank goodness we have the Senate that are going to be the adults in the room and get this done. There is too much at stake, especially when we're looking at a $50 billion budget to introduce egregious anti-diversity, equity, inclusion language that hadn't been vetted, that we simply didn't know the actual impact on our departments to be able to conduct the business of the state. I'm glad with one strike they just removed it all.
You know, your county is a pragmatic part of the state. Got a lot of folks that build a lot of great Ford trucks. To me, you can have a debate on whether that stuff's good or not, whether diversity, equity, inclusion things are good, whether they should be in any state department. It did seem like even folks that would generally be for such things thought maybe you don't slip that in as a budget amendment or even in the budget at all. It seemed like you had folks with the reservations were from folks that support those programs, but also the process of how that went down.
Yeah, and it wasn't well done. I mean, to throw something on the floor that you have no idea of the impact again. You know what our community wants, what I think the vast majority want, is just moderation. They want the government to, you know, when it comes to a state budget, fund the vital needs of the state, do things like fix our roads, expand I-70, fund our public libraries. We're not asking for a lot, Scott, and I think that's where most people are.
I saw the Senate put the library funding back in. I guess it's just, you know, as you might not surprise you, I am not a great connoisseur of classical literature, but it just would surprise me there's a whole bunch of porn in Missouri libraries.
Well, what our libraries are doing today, especially in our rural communities, they're just a gathering spot where folks have access to broadband and they can apply for jobs, they can seek out resources, they can take online classes to better themselves, right? We all know that libraries are a lot more than books on shelves, and again, this was just a really punitive measure. The Senate laughed at it essentially and it's gone.
Well, let's talk about an issue the Senate's going to deal with, I think, next week, education reform. You are from a district that is a longtime friend of public education.
Sure.
Lauren Arthur, when I think of her career, I think it will be, she was able to put a face on public education in the state Senate where it was hard to be against because she was hard to be against.
Yep, and an absolute champion for students.
Yeah. So there's folks, seems like every year St. Louis has a new idea for some charter school. How's that going to strike you if you're Senator Nurrenbern?
Well, first of all, I really hope to continue to carry that legacy and really be a true champion for public students. You know, we have nearly 1 million kids in our public schools, and we know that we have to do a better job of making sure that they have all the opportunities possible, but that we're really seeing tremendous growth and progress and achievement. And I am the first to say our public schools are not perfect. There is a lot of room for improvement, but we cannot do that if we continue to dismantle public education as we know it and throw our money all over the place through vouchers, through charter school expansion. That's not going to serve anybody. It
was interesting. I see a lot of folks from St. Louis tweet, and they're very excited to say, oh, this rural school is doing poorly, this rural school is doing poorly. And there was about 18% of rural schools that are not all over the state were struggling after COVID. But then they put out the numbers on charter schools. Half of those are struggling. And I'm like, it's only St. Louisans could throw shade on Polk County when half of their charter schools are struggling. It's interesting to me. You hear what's the number one buzzword on the House floor? Something's woke, right? Is there a more woke institution than a charter school? For good or bad, it is what it is, right?
It is, and what I fear about charter schools and what we have seen in Kansas City and St. Louis is that it's only the families that can already navigate that incredible level of bureaucracy. You got to get in early, you got to apply early. A lot of times you have to find your own transportation to get your kid there. What happens when we expand charter schools throughout the state is that we are now literally dismantling some of the best institutions around them, and that's the traditional public schools. When we have people going all over the place, what I worry about is the breakdown of communities and the breakdown of neighborhoods. Because
you'll close rural schools, there's no doubt.
That's one of the best things about our public schools today. They unite the school, and that we have to keep in mind.
It's always interesting to me to see something that's, well, this is terribly woke, unless it's a charter school. That's sort of the Republican line. We hate everything woke, unless it's a charter school. Then it's not that big a deal. It's going to be fine. The hypocrisy on that has been interesting to me. Let's talk about another thing. I believe Missourians are in for another Bill of Rights, right?
Yeah.
Parents' Bill of Rights?
And you know, we did pass Senate Bill 4, Senator Koenig's bill out of education the other day on the House side. And you know, I had my own amendment that I said, you know, let's get this done. As a mom, I want nothing more than to know what my kids are doing in school. Sure. I want to see what they're reading. I want to see what they're learning and how they're learning it, right? But what I also recognize, Scott, is that in the first 5 years, 50% of our teachers are leaving the profession. 50% of our teachers are leaving the classroom. And when we continue to put more barriers and more burdens in place, I think there's going to be more teachers that are simply going to throw up their hands and say, I'm done, and walk away.
Well, people say run government like a business. In a business, if you give someone more responsibility, you get more money, right?
Yeah.
I don't hear the calls to say, okay, we're going to give you a cost of living adjustment. We're not going to pay you for this extra work. I always wonder. I get it. In the suburbs, and the Republican folks are very angry about something all the time. Right now, it's schools, which is fine. They make some good points. My mother raised a CPA and an old hillbilly storyteller. I don't know that she ever looked at a curriculum or a syllabus. Do regular people do this, really?
You know, I think they engage with their schools, they engage with their teachers. They want to just call the teacher if something comes up and say, hey, what's the deal here? What was happening? Can you tell me what you guys did in class today, right? And parents should be able to do that, absolutely. But again, I worry about just the absolute interference where parents' involvement literally is trumping the education of every student in the classroom.
Well, to me, I think if your kid struggles in a subject, it would be nice to go see, okay, well, what are they teaching? What are they? I think you're going to see some folks that are already mad go to headhunt and find something, and if they don't find anything, they're still going to be mad, right?
Yeah, and we'll see what we come up with. Honestly, I think this is one where they feel like they have to get the check mark and get this done right now. And like I said,
I think that's right.
The vast majority of Democrats support a parents' bill of rights. But again, we're not going to vote for something that literally is going to stifle teaching in the classroom.
Well, where the rubber meets the road here is there's going to be some big database of all the curriculums in the school district, right? And if you want to see it, I mean, I'm kind of with you. It's a nice thing to have. I'm not sure that regular working people are going to spend their night sifting through a curriculum. However, is it going to be a state database? Are they going to keep it up and maintain it? Or are they going to dump this on local schools?
Well, how often when you have an issue, do you just go, oh, let me go to the state's website and see what's going on, right? You go to the people who are closest to you. Mm-hmm. You go to the teachers. You go to the principal at your local school. You click on your school's website. To think about going to some outside source and say, let me see what the state says about this, I think it's just ludicrous.
So tell me about the campaign. So you're up and running. Tell me what next summer, or as people start to really look at this race, compare you and your Republican opponent as the fall begins. What do you want them to know about you?
Well, I think I really represent moderation. I represent our community well. What our community wants are strong pieces of policy coming out of Jefferson City that really help our community. We want to talk about the kitchen table issues that are affecting our families. And our community is sick of these ridiculous partisan wars that are just focused on, the cultural wedge issues, right? Our community wants to talk about jobs, wants to talk about infrastructure, wants that funding to finally expand I-70. Those are the things that I'm excited to talk to my community about.
My sense would be, now maybe I know a little bit more of the northern chunk of Clay County than down in Lawrence District, but regular folks around the state, I think, are not tired of the culture wars. I think they're starting to smell which ones are just manufactured from Facebook to get them ginned up, and which ones they can sink their teeth into. I've seen some of these culture wars really permeate into the state, but I have seen some folks that don't bite on some of this stuff. And it's about the first time I've ever seen, it's like, oh, that's the thing. I think I would normally think you'd see a bunch of people on Facebook all tore up about. I'm seeing now they're a little more selective in how their outrage is manipulated.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on, and I really do think the pendulum is starting to swing on these things. What I keep hearing is we don't want another legislator, another senator who's simply going to be a rubber stamp for an extremist agenda.
Either side, right?
Either side, and I'm the first to call out my side when I think they're going too far.
Well, we hope as you decide to call out both sides, you'll come back throughout the campaign on This Week in Missouri Politics and tell us about it.
Thanks, Scott. Sure appreciate it.
And tell my old buddy Carpenter to Texas Hillbilly Pal sometime.
Will do. Thanks.
We'll be right back. Mike Haffner joins the show after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
All throughout Missouri, businesses are struggling to find workers. Childcare challenges are a big reason why. Our kids are losing out too. Through high-impact early childhood investments, we can support the workforce of today and better prepare our workforce of tomorrow. Empower families with the resources they need to succeed. Reduce crime and avoid costly interventions, saving taxpayers money. Together, we can make Missouri the best place to work, raise a family, and be a kid.
We all know puppy mills, cruelty, neglect, and pet store puppies are at high risk for disease, even death. We expect our laws to protect dogs, but now an out-of-state company called Petland is trying to change our state law to enable puppy mill cruelty. We all know it'll hurt the dogs we love. Contact your state legislators. Tell them, protect our dogs. Vote no on the cruelty. Vote no on the harmful puppy mill bill.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren, Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back. This week in Missouri Politics, we are joined by our opinion maker panel, with Adam Sommer, Heartland Pod. What's new on the radio, sir?
Well, we've added the Dirt Road Democrat show with Jess Piper to our feed, so that's new, yeah.
I like that. Representative Anthony Ealy, thank you so much for joining us. First time on the show?
Oh, yeah, thank you for having me.
Very much appreciate it. Where are you from now?
So I'm from Grandview area, from South Kansas City, southeastern Wisconsin.
Right. Now, for the rest of us, if you're at Arrowhead, how do you get there?
So you take 71 and you just go directly south.
There you go. Representative Jeff Farnan from the Great Northwest.
Great Northwest.
Very glad to have you, sir.
Thank you.
And Mike Haffner on the show many times from Cass County. Representative, boy, you've been in the middle of everything, it seems like, this year, huh?
Well, Scott, I appreciate you having me, and there has been quite a bit of legislation that's been flowing.
So this week's drama you had to sort out was something called an mRNA vaccine law, where some out-of-state folks wanted to kind of explain to the rest of us Missourians how to raise cattle. Break down just the cliff notes of what they were trying to do.
Well, Scott, to start off with, I believe in transparency. I believe in product labeling. But in this case, the process was broken. And so we went through a House bill, a committee substitute, and ultimately amendment yesterday. But the process was broken, and we didn't have a roundtable discussion to keep it centered on where it needed to be. And so a lot of misinformation out there. And I want to be very clear, there is no mRNA vaccines being used in our livestock, none. Now, where the problems with the bill happened with is they needed to differentiate between mRNA, which was used in the COVID immunizations, compared to an RNA. RNA is completely different. It cannot reproduce, all right? And so those differences need to be made because there's 2 RNA vaccines that are used in the pork industry, but have been used for decades. That differentiation was not made, and like Representative Farnan knows, as a farmer, they didn't differentiate the engineering that's being used, such as in soybeans, and by their definitions, by the wording, we would have had to track every soybean in the state of Missouri. We can't do that. We would have had to track every piece of beef that went through a slaughter facility that was raised in Missouri through the entire food process. We want to protect people, we want to protect the labeling, but let's do it the right way.
And the bill went down in committee, but you know me, I'm always a skeptical hillbilly when folks from Ohio want to come and tell us how to raise cattle. Why don't you go raise your cattle in Ohio and get that perfect, then come back and talk to us?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we get along, Scott, because I couldn't agree with you more than that, and it's great to hear that that's the discussion that was being had, is about making sure the information is right, because that's so crucial, and it's hard enough as it is right now to raise. You know, you run some cattle. If you've got a smaller operation, you're already going to be tight on your margins. Why are we going to try to make it even harder for these folks, to make money while they're doing that? And by the way, they're usually providing better beef anyway.
Representative, you had to, when you were first running, you're hitting the streets of Grandview trying to rustle up votes. Did you think you'd be in the middle of something like this?
I actually didn't. I knew I knew that anything can come up, but I'm here now. So.
Well, Jeff, it was interesting. I mean, it kind of felt like at the end there was an attempt just to pass anything to get it through. It did seem like this debate doesn't go away, though. Where does this come back next year?
I think it will come back. It might be in a different form.
Yeah.
They may make the little requirements a little bit tighter, but I definitely think it will come back. Our whole committee, we're all for informed consent, but this bill was like putting the cart before the horse. We do not do any mRNA vaccines right now, so this bill really didn't have a purpose.
Well, you're talking about product labeling. That's kind of a federal thing for the most part, right?
I agree.
Are there a bunch of state regulations and product labeling that I'm not aware of? I mean, most things are FDA labeling requirements. It's kind of uniform.
And we said that too, that if this was such a big deal right now, where's the FDA? Why are they not involved in this decision?
You will make it okay for old folks from Tarkio and Rockport to fight, but you don't want to help the folks in Nebraska against us,
Right, and we don't want to hamper any farmer in Missouri from, raising their product and bringing it to the market.
Adam, it was sort of Missouri House on steroids. They have the budget. The House Budget Committee works so hard. It is the best way to ever learn state government. You go through every line.
Right.
at the very end, they put an amendment banning DEI, which seems to be a very fine conversation to have, whether you should have these programs or not. That's fine. But they put it in the budget at the last second and kind of just sank the house.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent illustration of what the culture war has done to the political process, because we're dealing with an issue that really has nothing to do with the budget, and is really just somebody trying to start a conversation about something that's much different than what they want the conversation to be. They want to talk about woke. They want to talk about, forcing people to take certain viewpoints. But really, what they're talking about is corporate infrastructure and the way corporations run a lot of their hiring, in the modern age. And they want to stick that on the end of an incredibly detailed process, and naturally, it's going to sink the ship.
What I'm interested in, you're a professional. You come to Jeff City. You watch this budget process, which is a very arduous process. And I think a lot of folks had a lot of positive things to say about the overall House budget. And then at the very end, you see this pretty major policy change kind of thrown in. You had to be thinking, is this really how this works here?
That's exactly right. We were all kind of thrown for a loop on it, and I didn't know if this was normal or not, and I come to the understanding it probably was not normal.
Well, Representative Haffner, I assume there's many times if you're in the House, you're like, that's Senate, I can't believe it. This is one of those times like, it's okay to have them old boys over there, right?
Well, Scott, I'd say this. The legislative process is right. Our forefathers got it right. It's a difficult process. The legislative procedures are very different between the chambers. I do believe that DEI has to be addressed. I believe with the Speaker that probably a standalone piece of legislation would have been better. But let the legislative process play out. Let's see what the Senate comes up with and give us an opportunity to debate that in the House.
You're one of the most seasoned legislators in the House. There might be a version of this ban that you could vote for, right?
Absolutely.
But as a bill, right?
Well, let's see what the Senate does. I've heard a lot of things. Maybe they're going to come up with a solution that we can debate and get some good quality legislation through the process.
I think what you may find is they're going to come up with a solution to roll the House. This may be their idea. But when you talk about these programs, look, you could start off with throwing all the buzzwords of woke around. At the end of the day, there's a lot of Missouri corporations that employ a lot of Missourians that we definitely want to keep here and keep happy, who have taken on this and believe this is an important part of how they do business.
And to be honest with you, I'm a product of DEI, and in my opinion, CRT is a portion of that. I still don't understand the push against DEI. I learned about this stuff in undergrad, and actually helped me be able to communicate just across the cultural boundaries, especially when I needed it the most. And so, like in my district, the Chamber of Commerce, we are trying to attract businesses inside of my district, and to say that businesses cannot foster a diverse atmosphere because of some policy that the state wants to pass. It's very unattractive, and it won't bring as much diversity into that business.
Well, let's also talk. I mean, there are every business in this state you talk to that employs more than 500 people needs folks that can code. Folks that can code are generally younger, and whether you like it or not, whether you're on a farm in West Butler County or you're sitting on the plaza having a cocktail, the fact is, those coding skills are by younger folks, mostly liberal, and they don't want these types of things banned. It puts a bad taste in their mouth. It's almost went full circle. It's bad for business.
And I don't think the state of Missouri wants to see people move out.
No.
Especially at a time, especially in Kansas City, when we're considering ourselves to be the hub of the Midwest. And so you want more people to come in, you want businesses to come in. And so I think it's just bad policy all around.
Representative Haffner, to me, there is no bill that has more fraught with danger to regular Missourians right now. Whether some of these social culture wars pass, folks are probably going to go to work the next day. Foreign ownership of land. It was a campaign issue raised by Josh Hawley back in 2016. It's hung around. It feels like the legislature wants to have something they can say is that and have a win. But boy, you could put real Missourians out of work quick if you pass this wrong.
That is correct. And again,
so they called you in, right?
Well, the bill has changed as it went through the Senate. And I appreciate Senate leadership because they asked for House members, including me, to come over and be engaged in that negotiating process. Again, I go back to the process. The process is good. And so there's some aspects of that I wanted to see stay in the bill on the national security side with the 5 restricted countries. But there are plenty of protections at the federal and the state level in order to ensure, because what the bill says right now is that there will not be foreign ownership of agricultural land. There's checks and balances at the federal level for the national security standpoint, and also at the state level. And what I mean by that is we had deep conversations with both the State Department and the Treasury Department on a Committee on Foreign Investment. They use a tool called the OFAC system, the Office of Foreign Asset Control. It is a database based upon the alliances and treaties of the United States to tell us the bad actors. We are using that in the Missouri banking industry. That is the check and balance in the process. I wanted to take it to another level. I think there needs to be redundancy in there. And so the Senate said, not necessarily so. We're still protecting the sovereign nature of the state of Missouri. No foreign acquisition of agricultural land, and I will revisit that concept with the Critical Infrastructure Act next year.
It feels like a grenade. You could handle this just the wrong way and it goes off. And it seems like a lot of risk for a Facebook post.
Yeah, which I'm certainly familiar with. It's interesting because we've got a group of folks who are wanting to push this, and nobody seem to want to talk about that in 2013. The reason that we're here in the first place is because the same party allowed this to happen in the first place. You've been doing this longer than I have, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe the Republicans were in control of both chambers in 2013 when it was taken from a 0.5% to a full percent for foreign ownership. So, you know, as far as that goes, we're fixing a problem that we created ourselves, if you're looking at the Missouri government. And I share the concerns that are we going to, you know, get the fly on the wall but leave a hole with the sledgehammer? I
think folks at Barron and Anheuser-Busch will be a little bit surprised that they don't want folks spending money in Missouri.
Yeah, so this is an issue that I'm not as well versed on. And so, but I do understand the concept that a couple of years ago, this piece of legislation passed the House, which opened up the market for foreign ownership of land. I'm all in support of making sure that, you know, land is not in control too much for people that's not living here. And but I also don't want to affect the Missouri employment structure, I guess. I don't want people in Missouri to lose jobs. And so I'll talk with my caucus more, then I may have a better understanding what's going on here.
We're going to lose our time here on the show, so with a minute left, who won the week?
The First Amendment, we don't have to worry quite as much about our library funding anymore.
Who won the week?
Two things. Kevin Whittam, by restoring a tax credit to allow feminine hygiene products and groceries to be free of tax. And then also with Ralph Yarl, and I'm glad that my colleagues were able to support him and charges were able to be brought against his shooter.
Sure, it's a tragedy. Who won the week?
With the defeat of House Bill 1169, Missouri small farmers won the week.
You're probably right about that.
I would go along with Jeff, but I would change it just slightly and say the people of Missouri won. I still believe that the initiative petition and protecting the Constitution is going to get across the finish line, but we have a good foundational budget. I'd like to see it be a little bit smaller, but I believe Missouri is going to be very happy with it.
I'm going to break the rule and do two this week. One, my dear friend from Lee Summit, Connie Searboy, former legislator, is joining the Judicial Selection Commission. An excellent choice. And new judge over in Cass County, Derek Spencer, old Butler County boy. He'll be laying the law down over in Cass County, Mike Haffner's area. And stick around, 11 o'clock today. We're going to have Justice and Journalism with Judge Mike Carter. My old pal Steve Ellman's joining him. It's going to be a great show. Stick around. But come back next week for This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics is sponsored by the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, Ameren, Spire, and the United Electric Cooperative.